Hey there. So, another episode of Get Out There and Get Known, but this one is different. This young lady, I just had a few, uh, been following her and looking at what she's doing and that sort of thing. And she is definitely a wordsmith. She's a communicator. She's a model. She has done so much. And I say she's a young lady because she's not even 30 yet, right? She's got a whole lot going on. But all of it stems from a standpoint that she really cares about people, equal justice, way before George Floyd. Was people were saying Black Lives Matter. She knew that way before then, but she has an interesting story about why she's starting a podcast. So you can take your words, get out there and get known by having a mission about what it is that you want to do, being mission minded, being really authentic to who you are. And that's what we're going to talk about today, about how really you use your giftings to really uplift others. So, right after this, I'm going to bring up our guests. All righty. But I'm not going to end the podcast. I want to start the podcast. So I was about to start it before I ended. So we're not. So right after this, we're not going to end it. Right after this, we're going to bring up my guest, Danaé Reid.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there. So, like I promised you, I was going to bring up my guest, and there she is. So I first found out about you from WURD, which is a Black-owned radio station in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started following you on LinkedIn, and I said, well, she doesn't live in Philly and she's a model. I said, she has a lot of interesting things going on. And you also write for a newspaper, I believe, in the Philadelphia Sun.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but she lives in New York. So she has all of these words, I guess you would say, that she's sharing with the world. And so Dana, kind of tell us how it all really started, like, what we talked about before about what you had an interest in, and then kind of shifted it and say, hey, let me do this thing this way.
Yeah. So actually, common mistake, it's Danaé.
Danaé. Okay.
It's all good. So actually, I've always wanted to be a host. I've always wanted to facilitate in that space because I've always been good with words. I've always been good with talking, but I've never been good with like anything technical like math or science. So this was kind of always the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I've known I wanted to be a host since third grade. And, I just kind of kept with that. And it kind of starts with the nuanced story about how some kid told me I was like a Black Dr. Phil. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Mind you, we were 9 at the time. And from then on, I kind of just knew I wanted to be a host. So initially, I was really interested in the psychology aspect of it. I wanted to be like a Dr. Phil. And then I took some psychology courses and I did not like it at all. But I loved sociology. And so I just made the decision to go into communications in general. And now it's kind of led to a lot of things that kind of led me to where I am now, hosting for Word and writing and starting my own podcast. And I don't know, it's beautiful how everything seems so disjointed, but they seemingly come together at some point. And I'm only 27, so I feel really honored to be able to say that so soon. And I know I have a lot left to do.
And WURD is a big station. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's
absolutely.
like one of the top African American stations in the country.
Yeah.
And it's real true to its mission. And then for you to actually be living in New York and to do the show in Philly is kind of cool too as well. And then the name of that show is
Crosswords.
And who named that and what is it about?
Yeah. So Crosswords, first, I'm going to preface this by saying it comes on every Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. So I'm actually getting on in a little bit.
That's a lot. That's a big deal to do it every day, like just about every day for 2 hours.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
2 hours, and I absolutely love it. But my co-host slash producer, who's absolutely amazing, her name is Kayla J, slash the music nerd. She actually came up with the name Crosswords, and essentially what it's about is having intergenerational conversations. We like to have conversations across the generational lines. We're both millennials. She's a little bit older than me. I am the last year of millennial.
Yeah,
Um,
we are.
yeah, yeah,
Because my daughter's millennial. She's like, I just made the cutoff. I'm like, yep,
just
you did.
made it because I love Gen Z, but I wouldn't want to be Gen Z. No offense at all. But so even me and her kind of have different opinions because she's a couple years older than me, and then we have people call in our guests who tend to be older, and we have
Baby
conversations
boomers.
with them, and it's been really interesting. The dynamic is interesting because my co-host, she has an old soul. And she's, very much in the church, and I have a very like spritey young spirit, and
Mhm.
I'm not. And so we have those kind of conversations. But essentially, we talked about it being like intergenerational, but it's also kind of intercultural as well. And I really like that because I learn a lot, and I feel like I have a lot that I'm able to teach people as well.
I like that. I like that. And
Mhm.
so one of the things you have guests that come in. So some guests are baby boomers, some are. Do you have a lot of Gen Xers come in? Gen Xers are like they call that silent generation. It's kind of
Yeah.
like they're in between the boomers and the millennials, and it's like, where are you,
Every
Gen X?
every once in a while we do have some Gen Xers call in. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And like I said, it's such a treat because they're really passionate about politics. And,
Hmm.
we do this thing called the Twitter debate of the day, and we talk about, just different things like that. We debate, and they get really interested and involved and invested. And that's what it is for me. I love it so much. It's a lot harder to talk for 2 hours than people would think,
Oh
but
yeah.
I
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is good. And then you're going to start a podcast. So
Mhm.
before we get to the podcast, so one of the other things that you model and
Mhm. Yes, I do.
your agency, I guess, is that I Speak Model. That's who your agency
We
is.
speak, yeah, we
We
speak.
Speak Model. We Speak
Uh-huh.
Model. Should I put that down at the bottom? We Speak Model.com.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll put that down there. And so tell us how you got into modeling and all that,
Oh God.
what that was about. I always say models tend to want to be role models.
Mhm.
Those are the things people look to them. So being interested in people and that sort of thing, I can see how you want to do that. But explain to people how you got into the modeling.
So I'm working on being succinct in 2023. So I'm gonna try to make this really quick. So like I said earlier, I've always wanted to be in communications, and so on my college campus, I had a radio show. And I saw that the industry was kind of moving and shaking. And honestly, the guy that I was dating after we broke up, he started dating a model after me. So that was like a little bit of it too, because I'm like, I could be a model too. Like, you want to date a model? I could be a model. So that was part of it. But the
Okay.
other but the other component to it was my mind has always been very meticulous in the way that I do things. I like to strategize. And so in my head, I was like, okay, I have this radio show. I want it to be more popular. I want to network. I want to meet more people, have more guests. And so a great way to do that would be taking pictures with people, and they would post me on their page, they would tag me, I would post it on my page, tag them. And so it became a stream of people that started to follow me. And it's been such a blessing since then. But that's really how it started. Modeling was 100% an accident, but now it's my whole entire life. Yeah. And
Wow.
I think when you're meant to do something, God really aligns you.
Hmm.
Because I signed to an agency within a couple months, and that is very unheard of.
That
So
is very unheard of. So we
mhm.
speak model.com. If people go there, they'll actually find all your information, some of your pictures. I saw a
Mhm.
wedding picture in there. That
No,
was
it was for a
oh shoot.
magazine. Yeah,
Okay. Like
magazine.
I was like, she got married too.
No, no,
But
no,
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 it was a
no.
beautiful
I
picture.
am.
I was like,
It's
so that
not.
was just part of for the magazine. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people think the things that you're doing, what they call quote unquote the glamour field, right? It's the
Mhm.
glamour field to be on radio, to do modeling, to do you interviewing guests and that sort of thing. But it's really like an alignment with who you are. And
Yeah.
what you said is that it seems disjointed, but it really is like God putting all the pieces together. And
Yeah.
so I like how you said you're very strategic because you want to get the show out there, get known. And so you said, well, part of it would be to really model and to really put that together. And it does, it really has helped. And now something happened to you last year that was very, very tragic,
Mhm.
but you're pulling those pieces together out to a further platform.
Yeah.
And you want to speak about that.
Absolutely. So I love community. I love foraging community, and I'm obsessed with networking. And one thing I will say about myself is I'm really great at following up and creating those sort of bonds and keeping them.
Hmm.
Um, and that's always kind of been a part of my makeup, right? And so I lost my mom last year in May of last year, May 28th. And that she's the first person I've lost. I hadn't, I
Mm.
mean, you know, there's people in my family who had passed away, not that I was necessarily so close to, but it would take an entire show and a half and probably more to explain how close me and my mom are, and what our relationship was like. And just being in a near death situation with her, because I
Hmm.
was actually, involved in everything. um it,
In the
it
car accident. Hmm.
it sent me reeling. And I am the type of person, I because I am a communicator, I like to communicate and I like to try to understand things. But grief is something, and the loss of my mom so suddenly in that way, is not something that I can comprehend or make sense of. And so because of that, it was important for me to try to find community, to try to source community.
Hmm.
And one day I was reading a book. I've been reading a lot of books about grief right now. That's kind of the thing that I'm most interested
Yeah.
in learning. And it's hard because I'm in it, but it's so fascinating to me. You know, people talk about love and they talk about sex and they talk about these certain things, but and the nuances behind them. But grief is one of those things that is relatively untouched, or it's you talk about it for a second and then you don't.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want it to be that way. I don't want it to be that way. And I was fortunate enough to have people in my life and in my family who gave me the space to talk, about how I was feeling. And in my experience, I've learned that so many people do not have that. And
Hmm.
so, again, like I said, I've been reading a lot about grief. And one day I was sitting on the train and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll start a blog. I'll interview people because that's my background. I'll interview people. I'll forge community that way and get people's stories out there. And then I was like, wait, why would I do that if I have so much experience in radio and that's my
Right.
life and communications is my life and I want to be a host, why not just start a podcast? And so on the train, maybe in the span of 10 minutes, I came up with the idea. And the podcast is called Damn Mom, Really? And essentially, that's how I felt every day since I've lost my mom.
Mhm.
It's like, damn, mom, really? You're not here.
You're
Damn, mom,
here.
really? I got to figure this out on my own. And I find that a lot of people who have lost a mother specifically feel that way. And my mom's
Mhm.
initials are also DMR. So DMR, damn mom, really, it all kind of coincides in such a holistic way, which is something that's also important to me as well.
See, that's one of the things too, when you said it really comes full circle
Yeah.
because you could have been, I don't know, a veterinarian, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
lost your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whole thing about you creating the community and the podcast would not have been a thing. But
Yeah.
because you've been in radio and you write articles and you're really bringing the platform to a part where people can open up and talk about it. I
Yeah.
have a best friend as well, that also lost her son. So it's different, because most people don't expect to go before
Their
for the children to
children.
go before them. So
Mm-hmm.
she started off. It's the same thing with you. The whole grief. Her name is Dr. Portia Lockett. So she started really studying grief. Went through grief counseling. Became
Mm-hmm.
certified. Started a foundation, and that's what she is now. She's really a grief person, a grief counselor, and she does that. And then she was a chaplain, so it was kind of almost like a natural kind of a thing, but nothing that she would have ever chose if she had not had her son Azel
Exactly.
had died. And so it's one of those things where you're listening. I think you're listening to God, even though it is a tragic. But by you starting the podcast, which airs this Sunday, it'll
Mm-hmm.
be on Apple Podcasts and
Mm-hmm.
Spotify and all of those things as well. And like you said, sometimes we take for granted that people are always going to be there, especially someone who lost your mom so young. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, mom, really? You're not here?
Yeah.
Like you want to pick the phone up or call them. And that even happened with me because I lost my parents in 2019. And they were
Sorry.
in their 80s, but still, sometimes you just,
Still
you
want to pick up the phone.
yeah, you
Yeah.
still, the first person that you call or think or want to talk to, it's not there. So for you to have that space, that
Mm-hmm.
open space to talk about that, and because you love interviewing, I will offer Dr. Portia Lockett, a person that you can bring on to the show for you to interview and talk about that and build community. Um,
Yeah. I would
because
absolutely love that.
yeah, I think you really, really would. would appreciate that. And so some of the things that that we're doing with the podcast world, so to speak, is it a video podcast or is it going to be
So it's going to start out as only audio. Um,
okay?
Eventually, I would like to do it video. But so I'm going to be interviewing people, other people who have lost their moms. I have a whole. I was actually kind of overwhelmed and surprised by how many people were interested in being a part of it, or how
Wow.
many people could relate to losing a mom. And it's not just moms. I also opened it up to mother figures. I actually have somebody who's interested in coming on and talking about the loss of their grandmom, and people who have estrangement who I have coming on to have a conversation with, and just kind of about how we're feeling, kind of therapizing. I don't know if that's a word, but therapizing each other, right? So I have people from all across the country, and so because of that, it does have to be a virtual sort of situation, and I am
Mhm.
going to do it only audio at first, but eventually I would like for it to expand to video as well, and hopefully it'll get big, and I'll actually have a studio space and people can come and we can just sit and talk together.
And then eventually maybe retreats or conferences and that sort of thing. That's it's kind of like one of those things. The proper term, it's a grief recovery method specialist
I
is
love
what she is.
grief
Grief
recovery
recovery method
method. I love that.
specialist.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to keep that in my memory bank because
Yes,
I love
yes.
that. Thank
That's
you for
that's
that.
what she is. So she can come on from that standpoint and
Yeah.
really explain to people because there's going to be times, obviously, pronounce your name again because I'm looking at it. I want to
Danae, it's
say
okay.
Danae. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it the other way. It's like so Danae.
Mm-hmm.
So Danae. So
Okay.
there will become times where your father is survived the accident, your brother, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's times when you want to talk about your mom and and at a certain point in time, even with friends. So there's a time sometimes you feel like, am I talking too much about it? It's that weird kind of feeling. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
has she gotten over it? No one ever gets over
It's
it.
over. Yeah.
So Portia created these Dr. Portia created these prompt cards. And the prompt cards are really like little things like it'll say for 30 days, it'll say, so you can do it privately or you can do it in a group. And it says, write a letter to your loved one that you lost. What would you say?
Mm-hmm.
Another day, it's like, what was their favorite food? What kind of, and so every 30 days it gives you a prompt because now you feel like I can express this, I can talk this. Where
That's
before,
it.
sometimes if you're always talking about it, people are like, you're talking about this too much.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't know, everybody grieves differently, but the prompts are like a way for you to get it out or to really share it, maybe with your brother, maybe with your father, or
Yeah.
even just other people who have lost their parents as well,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So it was like out of that product just came out of from her own experience, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out for sure.
Yeah,
Think
yeah,
that would be really helpful for me. And
that is
definitely my brother and my dad. I'm very boisterous. I was kind of me and my mom were like the talkers. My brother and my dad
okay.
are very like laid back. So I think that would be
Ah,
good for them.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So that's where the gift of the words came from your mom.
Oh, absolutely. A
So the
hundred
gift.
percent.
Okay, okay. So we said some of the things that you said you were just coming back from the museum. Were you coming from as a participant, or what was going on there?
Yeah. It was actually my first outing. I actually am just getting over COVID.
Oh my
So it
God.
was, yeah, so it's my first outing post COVID. And I just went to the Terry Mugler exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum, and that was really nice too. It's interesting we're talking about this from the standpoint of being a model, because a lot of times when I go into spaces like that, specifically exhibits like that, I'm not necessarily just a consumer. A lot of things start reeling in my head, and the potential that I have as a model to go further than I, have. Typically, I do a lot of beauty, but I like to get into editorial. And so I was looking
Mhm.
at the pieces, and I would like to model this, and I would like to model in something like this, and just my wheels start turning. You guys can probably tell by now I am an ideas person, 100%. Million ideas a day. I don't always get executed, but I always have an idea. But yeah, it was a lovely experience. Me and one of my friends went, and I'm feeling really honored and really blessed for that. And actually, in that, we were having a conversation kind of in alignment with what we're talking about now, with the things that align, and how, your interest is in this. And then it seems so far away from what you're doing. But then one day it's like, wait, the reason I wanted to be a host is because I was interested in people, and not just people in a surface level, but really understanding people. And now I'm
Mm-hmm.
creating this podcast that's in direct alignment with what I wanted to do in third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it until you guys are like witnessing me process in real time, because I didn't realize it until that moment we had that conversation, that that's what I was doing. And so it's really special, and I've had a hard time talking to God uh, over these past 8 months,
Yeah.
just because of the nature of the situation. Um, which isn't necessarily something I struggled with before, but it is beautiful to see how intentional that God remains, even when you kind of don't
Mm-hmm.
understand or see it. And I don't mean to be preachy on it, but I, these are the things that kind of allow me to find light in my situation. I've along with the podcast and the work that I've been doing ever since I lost my mom, I've used a lot of people were really concerned about me when it first happened, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
because my mom, when I say like my mom is literally like my heart and soul, like I don't even breathe without my mom. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people were concerned about me, but it's been important for me because of how much I love her to take care of the product. I feel like I am the product. I feel like I am her work of art.
Mm-hmm.
Not to toot my own horn, but that's really how I feel. That's how my parents made me feel, and that's how I feel. And so I owe it to her to live. Like, before she passed, I didn't necessarily feel like I had a responsibility. I was just kind of free floating,
Yeah.
very like, oh, I'm just here. Life is great. Like, the world sucks, but my life is great. And that all got shut down very quickly. But because of that, I now can facilitate in a manner that makes me feel like I have purpose. And I do believe that I
Mm-hmm.
do, surviving that tragedy myself. I feel like I owe it to her to live. And
Yeah.
so I know I kind of like took what you said about the museum and kind of changed it into some other metacosm of a whole bunch of other stuff. But
No, that's it. That really is it, because I want to know, like, when you're seeing things now, you're seeing things differently.
absolutely.
You have a different purpose, and even though your mom isn't here on this realm, she's still with you. And like you said, you are her product. You are her work of art. I
Yeah.
I think that God um has is weaving all the pieces together for you. This is not like the end. There's some other things that are coming on. Like I said to you earlier, I said I see you doing retreats.
Yeah,
I
I
see
would
you
love it.
really, all the things that you're doing right now, it seems disjointed, but then you'll look back and you said, that's why they did that. That's why that
Mhm,
happened. That's why I have that
mhm.
experience of that. That's why I met that person. Right?
Right,
It's like
right.
there's no accidents.
Yeah,
And so you'll see it later. You won't see it right now, but the whole thing of it is that you're open. And
yeah.
that's what's so beautiful about you. You're just open about and being intentional. Letting the ideas flow. Some will stick, some won't. Some
Mhm.
will get legs and some will move. Like the
Yeah,
podcast is getting legs. Like you said, we're going to start out with audio and then we'll move to video. What I like most about you, Danae, is that it doesn't have to be perfect for you to get started. You
yeah.
just get started. And
Mhm.
that's almost like a millennial trait in a way. It's like, I'm just gonna do the darn thing, okay?
Yeah,
It's like I'm
yeah.
gonna do it. And if it don't
And
work out, I'll redo it.
yeah. And you know what too though? On top of it being a millennial trait, I credit my parents so much because they always saw me. It was never any, obviously they had their ideals of how I should get to things, and they might not have necessarily understood my path, and even I might not have either. But they always allowed me the ability to express myself.
Mhm.
Um, and so because of that, I never like thought I could fail. My mom used to always say, you either win or you learn something. And that's something that stuck with me my whole life. So when it comes to trying things, I'm never afraid. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
there's no reason for me to be afraid because, my mom owned a business and my dad, they have been together since they were 19. I just saw so much success in them. And they also like fed me so much spiritually,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
listened to me and they heard me and they saw me, and I get emotional when I talk about it because I know that that's not a lot of people's experience, but
No,
I've
it's
been
not.
so fortunate and so blessed. And so when it comes to trying to achieve my goals or trying to fulfill my goals, it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it because like
Yeah.
my mom and dad never told me I couldn't. They always let me be. So I
And your
credit.
mom was a business owner, so she was an entrepreneur. What
Yeah.
kind of business was she in?
So she had a State Farm insurance agency. Um,
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she also Jewel inspired. She had a business where she would make greeting cards and notebooks and customize them and uh, mugs and she.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom is like I could talk about her for days. She had a organization that is still going now called Read Cares, where she would collect non-perishable goods and donate them to college campuses to mitigate food insecurity. Like
Mm.
she was active in church. Like she was just such this prolific woman. I almost feel like in awe of her and kind of really honored to exist and experience her the way that I did because
Hmm.
she's just this otherworldly figure. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
she was lining the things up right for you to really see.
yeah,
Because even having a State Farm insurance agency, that's a major. You got to get all the regulations and all that kind of thing. It's not that many African Americans in there, probably
yeah,
a handful,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
In a major market,
yeah, yep.
and then also too to have the promotional products and that sort of thing, and then to
Mhm,
do not just for what do you call her and her three, but
mhm,
for other people as
yeah,
well. And that's a major thing.
mhm,
So I can see how the radio station, all the communication things, because it's like you're building this platform
mhm,
and you're getting out there and you're getting known, but not just getting known because you're beautiful and you're smart, but it's like it's beyond that. It's something that's beyond that, that we will see. I'm going to have you on this show again next year this
oh,
time, so that
yeah,
you could tell me all the things that are going on between now and then, because the podcast, which is called Damn I'm Really,
mhm,
DMR, is like going to be dropping, and then it will bring in that community that you're talking about, bringing in the community. And it's not just because, you know, how do I say it? It's not just because you want to start another thing, because you're already on the radio every day, like for
yeah.
2 hours. But it was just like something that you feel led to do,
Mhm.
just led to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
like I said, it's something that came up so quickly, and I forgot to mention my mom is also an author too. She wrote 2 books.
oh my God. Are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
serious? I did not
yeah,
know that. Okay.
yeah.
So
So,
what were
like
the books names? We wanted, because they're
yeah,
still on Amazon.
yeah,
Books are there
absolutely.
that we can get them now. So that's why I always tell people books are legacy books too. So
Yeah.
what were the name of the books?
Yeah, so she wrote the first one is called Jewels for My Journey, and the second
Mm.
one is called Jewels 2. So they're actually
Oh.
still very available on Amazon. Sometimes I open up a page because a lot of it is just her, personal life lessons that I take from as well. But, again, stuff like that has been what has led me and guided me, and I came up with the idea, like I said, in 10 minutes. And it's so funny because when we first talked about doing this, I hadn't had my podcast idea yet. That's
Mhm.
how new it is. That's how spontaneous
Oh
it
my God.
feels. Yeah, yeah. And so it's funny, but I would love to come back on next year and talk about the podcast and where I'm at with it. And
Yes.
I'm really excited to see it grow.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll be so many people will be impacted by it. So I
Oh,
just really
thank you.
appreciate you being so open and honest, and just really, like you said, it people can kind of tell at an early age where a kid is. And so like around that time, they said they called you a little Dr. Phil, right? So now you're interviewing people all over the place, psychology, talking about the things that are the most closest things, right? Like Dr. Phil would, things that are really close, about losing a parent, losing your mom, those are the things that Dr. Phil will have people come on and sit down on and talk about. So you wouldn't know at 9 years old what they were really talking about, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, so we're gonna talk
yeah.
about this. But
Yep.
that's like your gifting. And I call
Oh,
it just using your gift.
thank
And
you.
don't ever bury it. Keep shining, young lady. Dr. Claire Peters over here, she said she loved this, and
Thank
she's sending
you.
you blessings and that
Blessings
sort of
to
thing
you.
as well. Dr. Claire Peters. So yeah, she's a minister as well. So she's on
Oh,
here and just saying that to you. And then Susan Conley, she said that thanks for the podcast and the wisdom too. So that is so good. I just appreciate you. You are really doing the thing. And then Sunday we can the newspaper that you write for is also online as well.
I haven't written for them in a little bit, so
Right.
you might not see anything coming anytime soon. But if that changes, I will let you guys know.
Okay. And then the Instagram, give us the Instagram as well.
Yeah, so my Instagram is DANAEREID underscore. And if you guys want to follow my podcast Instagram, it's just Damn Mom, really. And the link,
Okay.
the Instagram is also in the bio on my main Instagram, which again is DANAEREID underscore.
All right, I'm gonna go follow. I'm gonna follow the new podcast because I know that was there because we
Yeah.
didn't know that at the time. Well, thank you so much, Danae.
Yeah, you guys, you're right.
Today, because I wanted to say it the other way, right? So
It's
today, but
okay.
it's like, listen, I did take language in college. It does have the little asterisk over the
Oh,
E, so
good.
it's like, hey,
Oh,
today,
good. Oh,
right?
good.
Well, thank you so much for joining Get Out There, Get Known podcast. I wish you a lot of success
Thank
on
you.
that, and please keep in touch. I will get you in touch with Dr. Portia, who's a grief recovery method specialist for the podcast as well, for the podcast DMR or Damn Mom Really
Yeah.
podcast. It'll be coming out this week. So thank you so much for joining us. And then it'll be in the show notes later as well.
Mhm.
All righty. God bless you. And I will talk to you later. All righty.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages.